live.
You don't have to admit people for chat and that, just a heads up, because that's what Ben always has to manage those two things.
These things here.
Yeah.
It's like the note from John there, he's on an attendee. Okay, well, we'll call the meeting to order, then a few minutes late. We'll blame Brian just because I was late also. I think, let's see, we got John on the phone, who are we missing? We're missing Dr. Ramos. Anybody else? So we have a quorum. I don't know if he said he was not gonna join.
I did not hear from him.
Okay.
So
Let's assume he's.
I guess
not
he's
gonna-
traveling.
Okay, so we are underway. We usually start with the public comment. Are you able to see if there are people on phone?
I do not have any chats requesting to speak
At the moment, do we have
I know.
anybody in the audience here that would like to make a public comment? Not at the moment. We'll circle back. Sometimes there's a question after. Okay, I didn't see an agenda come out.
Are the minutes from last?
Ben's fired again. Yeah, see?
Oh, you got
Thank
it.
you, Tony.
Well, tell us what's next.
Yeah, I know.
Since none of us got it. It's always good, but I didn't see the copy of the minutes. How'd they look, Tony? Okay, you didn't see the minutes. We'll have to do that next time. What's next, Tony?
Let's see, approval,
Well, let's skip that part.
CIP outlook.
Okay, so now we're to you, Director. And we'll come back to public comment after, just because we didn't have it. All right.
So I want to thank everybody for coming today. I sent out a text saying if you could make it, it'd be a good meeting to attend to, because a lot of times it's just information that we pass. You know, we talked about JSX and the impacts on the tenants. This one is actually going to end in an assignment or a request to the advisory board to sort of take a look at our overall CIP, which we'll go over here in a minute, and make some recommendations, because we've got some decision points coming up. There's only limited amount of money, tons of projects to do. And so I want to just kind of, I know what my staff and I have sort of thought about and worked through, but I gotta get some outside people to kind of think through these things and see if we're on the right track, make some recommendations, and then we'll go from there. So this is kind of an important one for the airport and the airport staff. Next slide, if you can. All right. So as many of you remember from our last brief, and if you came through the terminal, JSX has started, not without some hiccups, but for the most part, pretty smooth. It started last Thursday, August 4th. The CEO is extremely happy. The staff's very happy. They're getting high loads, which is what makes them, want to stay here and want to expand. If you remember from the brief, our paid parking, which is the long-term lot, will go into effect the 1st of September. The signs have been ordered. We're working through the contracts and all that stuff. So we kind of gave ourselves a grace period. Also to remember, the short-term lot, which is out towards Signature, will be no overnight parking. So if you're gonna park somewhere, park overnight in the gravel lot. Do not park in the overnight lot or the short-term lot, because that's for most that we think the initial towing will occur there. Just because the tow truck's gonna be on a contract, they're gonna go through, figure out who's been spending the night. And we don't want to tow anyone. That's really our motto, is we don't want to get in that business, but we have to protect our customers and our tenants. So lessons learned so far, tons. This has been a 2.5-year project. A lot of staff work, fantastic work with Brian and his team and ops, and making sure that the aircraft comes in safely, that we've got the gear out there, reorganizing our thing. So I would say teamwork and communication has been pretty successful in this endeavor. And again, we want that to be a successful tenant here at the airport that expands and adds service into different cities, so that we can all go to, vacation right out of this airport instead of driving down to Denver. Next slide. Okay, so here's every October, and this is why it's timely for the Airport Advisory Board. We sit down with the FAA and CDOT. And we break, and oh, by the way, Matt from Javiation and his team as our on-call engineers. And we go through what our priorities are. What our priorities are for the, upcoming years, and we move some things around. And then the FAA tries to figure out what they can, fund and what they can't, and we move things around. So, for example, in 2020, we did, taxiway Alpha. The design was 400,000, and then in 2021, we spent $4.5 million. Got that done, if you remember the construction down there that went on for a while. Now we're in, the second half of that, to finish that project, because again, the FAA did not have enough money to do it all in 1 year, which is what we want to do and what they wanted to do. So they broke it out, and another $3 million for this year to do the rest of taxiway Alpha.
Sorry, I heard we're getting a gray screen.
So I was double checking.
Live.
I thought it was doing it wrong.
Oops. Share.
You just had it.
So while Brian's working through that, our next project, 2023, is taxiway Otis and Delta, the design. So that is the taxiway that goes across Sims out into that 170 acres that we have that's aeronautical land. Now that's tied into the movement of Sims, which is in final permitting. And so the Metro District, the Verve Metro District did bonds, has the money, and Sims should move basically south and west. And it will divide the non-aeronautical land down where FedEx is and where Quality Bike Parts has started construction in the aviation land. And that taxiway Otis will be the one that goes down into that land. And so again, you look at that, and the design is 750,000, followed by the next year, the construction phased, and this is important. Again, that's such a big project. We have to do it in 2 years. So 9 million in 2024. And then 7.5 million in 2025. And what that does is kind of gets the taxiway out into our new aeronautical land and rehabs Delta, which is probably one of the worst taxiways we have. It's in really bad shape.
Quick question, why Otis?
We named it after himself.
He's a great man. We want to honor him.
Visionary.
So, as a joke, when I first got here and I realized that we had all this land, I said, we're gonna build this taxiway. And everyone's like, well, we've been trying to do that for 20 years. I said, well, we're gonna do it. We're gonna name it Otis. For those of you who don't know, Otis was my call sign in the Marine Corps. So kind of an inside joke that like sure will of me pushing, and my staff, they all, this is not a certainly thing, but they came up with the joke that they're gonna call it taxiway Otis. The funny thing is, Air Traffic Control Tower and the FAA and the CDOT all are like, oh, it's taxiway Otis and Delta. So they're like, they bought into it. I don't know how.
Neat trick.
Yeah, so it may not end up being officially named Otis, but all the pilots like Stan and Greg, I would really appreciate when you call Tower, you're like, I'd like to go on Otis.
I'd like to know why we called Otis the Marine Corps.
I don't remember, Stan, that was too long ago.
Some problem with an elevator.
So that's, 9 and then $7.5 million, quite a bit of money. So that's a huge project. Then we get to 2026 and we've got the design, and the way we do it, and the FAA likes to do it, and we do it with our engineers, is we design 1 year and then you build the next. And that way they can kind of take those big dollar items and move them to other airports. So we do a kind of a design 1 year, small dollar, big project the next year. And so that's 30 right, 12 left rehab design. 2027, 30 right, 12 left, the construction's another $10 million project.
Is funding already in the FAA for that?
So no, it's in their CIP and it's in a system called WIMS, and that probably Matt, if I misspeak, please feel free to correct me. We actually don't get money until like the year before where we know it's there. And that's why that's why we meet in October.
Yeah.
And they go, no, that ain't gonna happen. We need to move things. We gotta do this. We gotta shift things around. Oh, we got more money. We got ARPA funds or, whatever funds. We can do other things. So that gets adjusted every October.
So the design for $1 million before, we don't know if we have that in 2026 yet. You don't know till the year before.
We won't know until October of 2025. Yep. Then in 2028, the master plan update, we are still good, but, we're reaching sort of the service life of our master plan. That's a $500,000. And then for 2029 is the taxiway Bravo removal, Charlie extension, and basically the runway 321 rehab design is a $500,000. And then in 2030, we have $7 million to basically do that construction. So again, 321 is failing. It is our worst surface on the airfield, and we basically are not able to keep up with the failure rate of it. And so, we're gonna talk about that in a second, but right now, if we go to the next slide, Brian.
So what else is not on here that might be?
So all the FAA stuff is on here. Obviously, Alpha Taxiway was for like the last 3.5 years, was not even on our radar. It was like, it wasn't anywhere, but then it started failing. And so it went from not even being on a 10-year project to number one in a 6-month period.
And what's the plan for 321 removal? Is that what I saw?
I'm gonna actually let Brian explain 321, because it's the taxiway removal and there's a non-standard distance. If you could just jump in right there real quick, Brian.
Taxiway Bravo is too close to the runway. And it's, we've had a modification to standards for 20 years, I guess now. So the plan is, what has always been to remove Bravo and then extend Charlie over to runway 12 right, 30 left. And that was scheduled to be done, Matt, a couple years ago. 2018, when I got here in 2017, the runway 3 and that Bravo removal, Charlie extension was 2018. Yeah, if not even before then. So it's something the FAA kicks back. Does that make sense?
So can that runway last another 8 years without?
You're ahead of me. Give me a minute. The answer is no. And that's why I'm gonna give you guys an assignment. Because that's where we're at that decision point of what do I do next?
Yeah, and what percentage of operations are on 2 or 3 or
321.
I used it once
Or-
in the last 8 years,
Yes. So,
When you need it, you need it.
which was once in 8 years.
So is it,
so go to the next slide. We'll get we're gonna get, these are all great questions. They're actually leading right where I want you to be led. So here's kind of our color coded, and then there's the years where they kind of fit in. And then again, there's like some seal coat and stuff that's not really major, that's on there. There's our rehab of the ramps that's not there because it's not FAA funded. But the FAA funded projects were the ones on the previous slide, and this is where they are on the thing. So if you look at, there's Otis, there's Delta, that's phase 1, and then extending that even further and extending Delta even further, that's phase 2. That allows access to the south side of the airport. So to answer your question, I'm gonna answer his first, then I'll get to yours.
That's the proper order.
1 to 1.4% of our operations are on the crosswind runway. That equates to about, on average, some days and some weeks, there's 0, about 10 to 14 landings a day. We do 525 a day on a normal day. Sometimes we go up some, but that's our average. So it is not used very much. And here's the issue. Normally, when you have a non-standard layout, the FAA comes in, and that's why I think at the time that was our number one priority in 2018, because Bravo was too close, Charlie needed to be extended. They are the ones that go, we're not gonna fund that, push it back. They're not gonna fund it, push it back. So they keep pushing it back because we have obviously higher priorities. But again, we have a say in that. And so the discussion I want to have today, and ultimately what we want to have come out of the advisory board is, what is the best CIP plan for this airport? So if you could go back one slide, Brian. So 321 is $7 million. And I don't think any of us in this room who have looked at this thinks that's $7 million. I think they took that 2018 dollars and just have kept it at 7 million. If you look at what they're doing, that's actually probably 15 or, look at what Otis and Delta are. That's 16, 17 million dollars. We think that's probably similar. So I have a list of projects, a list of money that the FAA says, yeah, we think we can kind of get you there. Now I need to work on our priorities. So from an airport's perspective, I have three choices. Like the design really doesn't count. $3 million already spent. So I can either take Otis and Delta or the 3012 left rehab or 321 and say, okay, what is our priority here? So I can either build Otis and Delta, which adds 170 plus acres to develop to the airport. I could take 321, but then I have to say, well, we're not going to build Otis and Delta. Or I could say, well, our main runway, that one could maybe last a couple more years, and we take the risk of that runway deteriorating, which again, I don't know if that's a good or a bad idea, but that's where we're at. We are at a point where in October, I want to be able to say, nope, this is the correct order. This is how we want to do it. Or nope, I believe the experts, kind of kicked it around, talked amongst themselves, talked about the professionals, talked to the flight schools, talked to the users. And we think 321 is critical because when you need it, you need it. And that we can wait on Otis and Delta. We can develop that land to the south 10 years, in 2030, maybe later. Or we push our main runway back and say, well, it's good enough. And as long as you don't increase traffic, which our numbers for traffic are increasing at about 40% this year.
So you've got two things there, rehab and strengthening, and I'm assuming the strengthening is to allow for larger jets, is that right?
I believe, so officially, no. Because you basically use a concrete or an asphalt mix, it just makes it better. So we are not trying to add bigger, heavier jets. That's a sort of a byproduct of taking, 15-year-old asphalt,
Okay, so
redoing the sub base and putting newer asphalt in. It just gives you that strength.
it's really just
It
maintenance.
will allow us to have heavier airplanes.
Yes.
Okay, that's,
It basically it's like your road. It gets rid of the potholes, makes a nice smooth road. One of the byproducts is most times, and again, if we have engineering questions, we get a byproduct of a stronger runway because you get the base better, you get the asphalt that's higher quality and newer.
Says the proceeds or potential proceeds of adding this 170 acres of development, would that be able to elevate and offset some of these, or are these expenses that'll come an FAA cost? And I mean, it's just, these are kind of set the way they are. Or did any of the other projects elevate the ability to address those sooner based on performance?
That's actually a really good question. I think no matter what, we need that FAA money. And the reason we do is the FAA pays 90% of all these dollars. CDOT pays 5%. That's why they have a seat at the table. And then the airport pays 5%. So even if we got, and I think Brandon did the numbers, if we fully developed the whole south side like in a year, it's only like $3 million a year in rental income. That does not get, now you're talking more plows, more staff, more, that does not get us to, whatever that total number is, probably $60 million. So I think it helps.
But we're only responsible for
5%.
3 million of that.
5%,
Right, okay, so this is 60, we're responsible for 3 million of it.
correct.
So 3 million does pay for our.
Well,
But it still has
but
to
it doesn't-
fall within that.
Yeah, I mean, we have that money now, so we could basically still do the projects. But what I thought his question was is, could we offset and say, pay 50% of what the FAA won't pay? And no, it's not enough.
so Matt, will you buy off on 7 million for that 321?
I would guess there, yeah, Paul's right, that's gonna be more expensive.
In the dollars.
And $20-$30.
Yeah, to reference the 2022 project, we're doing, probably around 1,500 feet of Jeffco Alpha, at $3 million.
Can you plant grass?
Which project has the most, could have the most dire impact to your current day-to-day operations?
Great question.
Our main runway. Because I think, again, crosswind runway is 1.3%, 1.4% of our ops, so not a big impact. If we didn't have the south, we would never need to build the, Otis and Delta. I think that's a benefit, but the most dire is if we lost our main runway. Does that mean JSX goes away? Does all these corporate aircraft go away? Now are we down on the one runway? So that answer would be our primary runway.
So what about 30 left? I thought there was at one point some discussion about lengthening that, making it a bigger runway and run other operations. That side of the.
So there was some discussion when we were dealing with one of the commercial airliners that were in a communication with us. They were concerned that if they began operations here on our main runway, and with the increased operations in weight, that runway, instead of lasting, so many years, it would only last 5 years, where then it would have to be completely rehabbed and tore up. So they were talking to us about, hey, let's do the south runway so that we can operate on the north runway for a while. Then we move to the south when you're tearing up and fixing the south, and so they didn't want to do it. That deal fell through, so it ended up kind of dying on the vine.
Also on 30 left, it is in the master plan to lengthen it 1,000 feet on the, I guess, east side. But the FAA considers, they call it our training runway, and we had problems getting money just to rehab that runway. And that was what, 2016?
16.
So that's beyond the timeline of this. I mean, is there concerns about the condition of 30 left lasting another 10 years?
No. It was rehabbed in 2016.
Oh,
So we expect somewhere between 15 so years on a runway that's been rehabbed.
Yeah, ideally, you do a pavement maintenance project every 5 to 8 years after you repave it, and it was repaved. So the airport is actively, or that they have a grant from CDOT Aeronautics to do a bumping fog seal, crack seal project. After 10 to 12 years, you want to do a mill and fill, take off 2 inches, put 2 inches back. Ideally, all pavements built on airports last at least 20 before you have to go full up reconstruction.
We currently can handle 737s and Airbuses on 30 right, but to a limited number. So by redoing this, we'll be able to handle more flights before it wears out or before it's. Did I remember that right?
So again, I think that a lot of that was a discussion with an airline that thought about coming here.
Yeah.
And our current plan gives it how many years? Where are we at? Another 5 years before we just do some strengthening and thing.
Okay.
With that airline coming with 737s, if that got shortened where it would have to be basically kind of a whole rebuild, so the substrat and the widening and the whole thing, again, that became too costly. So that deal fell through. But we start adding bigger planes, it tears up stuff faster.
Yeah.
So yes, in the south runway, the shorter runway, the 7,000-foot runway, only allows, that airline in particular lost about 40% of their routes in the summer. If we had to go, that's why they wanted us to fix the runway, but if they had to go to the shorter runway first, they lose about 40% of off. So they couldn't make it to Orlando and New York and DC and Baltimore in those flights because our DA in the summer. They need those extra 2,000 feet.
One last, maybe for the engine, can we do what's required on 30 right in 1 year? It's on there for 1 calendar year
It would be a full float room runway, yeah.
for a whole year.
No. So we did that project, we designed in 2014, did in 2015. It'd probably be a 60-day closure,
Okay.
but it'd be, closed completely. It's not long enough to really cut it in half and rehab half or rebuild half. So yeah, it would probably be a 90-day project at the most.
Thank you.
All of the operations on the crosswind runway, how many of them, any idea what percentage of those are aircraft that would have to go land somewhere else in certain weather conditions if that runway were unusable.
I don't think we have that data, but I have a genius in the back of the room.
That would have been my situation, that's why I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say 100% of it.
Well, I mean, I've seen in the right weather conditions, training aircraft using them, and I assume some of that is familiarization with using that cross, that changes the system dramatically, so it's good for people to learn, so.
Other dimensions of that as well. I'm Stan Speck, the local hangar land lease operator over here. My airplane demonstrated cross wind runway speed is 15 knots. A number of times I've approached the tower wanting to use that runway. And I was told it would be 10, 15, or 20 minutes before I could use it. So that's something that's not entering this discussion. It's not that we don't want to use it. 20 minutes, you can use up a lot of fuel. And certainly I understand why we can't use that runway for 10, 15, 20 minutes if the other runway's being used. But I want that to be entered into this discussion. It's not that we don't want to use it, we can't use it. Our flight school, what we do is, some people use it just because it's something different. Otherwise, usually we don't use it, and if the weather's really poor and stuff like that, we'll encourage them to go land at Erie, Longmont. We'll even go pick them up, or something like that. So I think I've landed on that airport maybe once a year, maybe. It's just not, got kind of a goofy end. It goes down, so if the winds are coming off, you get it sink before you come here, you gotta watch that. It kind of grounds, and goes over the thing, so you gotta make sure you slow down in the way you kind of, let's get it, and then at that end, it's kind of a little goofy too, as far as coming in that way, but I've used it a few times just to try it, there was nobody around, and we asked if we wanted to use it, or we had requested. Usually we won't, and then usually we'll go somewhere else if we have to, if the weather's really that poor. It's better to go somewhere else.
With the amount of traffic coming in on the east-west, it's very hard to switch traffic around that's only on that runway.
Even just switching from 30 right to one's left takes
Takes a long time, yeah. So they have to be emergency, and I think that's really where it's used for some training and it's there for emergency, but at that cost is it.
Yeah.
to work
So-
well.
The idea is not that, I'm an evil director and I only care about money. I hate giving up assets, and a crosswind runway is an asset. Randy. But we do have limited money. And so we're gonna go 2 slides forward because so basically what I'd like for you guys to do over the next month and a half in time for our October meeting is to say, okay, X is our priority, B is our next priority. Here's our 3 priorities. And kind of take a look at that and say, and then there's another aspect to this of what we could also do to do it. So CDOT comes out annually and does a whole pavement index of the entire airfield. So if you look, we're actually in pretty good shape overall. You can see we've got some orange here, down there, yellow there, but for the most part, all of our primary landing surfaces are in good shape. And that's, for an airport, that's what we want. The rest is the ramps. Taxiway Delta is marginal. That would be part of the Otis and Delta, the fix. And areas are in pretty good condition. And don't forget, we've been spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars of airport money between the hangars around the ramps, trying to improve that. And we actually have a plan where there's a full map of the entire airport with all the condition. And we basically target those worst sections. So last slide, I believe. Oh, here we go. So runway 321, the rehab is at least 10 years away. And I think, David, you asked, well, it will last 8 years. No, it will not. We do the crack seal here. This is Steve and my team goes out there and we do everything we can to maintain that. But that CDOT inspection is yellow and projected to go to red in about 2 years. Maybe if we're lucky, 3. So with 3 years, it becomes basically a danger, and then it's there we may have to close it because I have no option to keep it open because it's unsafe because the cracks are too good. There's also that non-compliant taxiway Bravo that Brian mentioned, and it's used less than 1.5% of the time. So what could we do if that runway became unusable and there was no money to fix it? Next slide. There is the option, and we've talked to both CDOT and the FAA, we could close that crosswind runway and then we could develop it. That would give us an additional, depending on how you look at it, about 27 acres, prime real estate on the north side of the airport, and lots of opportunities to there. So what I'm looking from the Airport Advisory Board is a list of our priorities. And again, our priorities that we've come up with were the CIP list. So I think it's the Otiston Delta, 30 right, and then the crosswind runway. But if you guys disagree, that's what I need to know. If I'm wrong, yes.
1.5% that's using that, can that be absorbed into the other runways, or would that be a loss?
No, it can be absorbed. The only time, and again, it's a little bit difficult, is when the winds are not conducive to the smaller planes. And again, Greg and Stan, if I just misspeak, because I have fly big helicopters, we don't care about the wind.
That's true. You are the man.
Yeah, we are the wind. If the crosswind component does not line up with the main runway, so let's say it's coming from over here, that crosswind runway now puts them where their smaller planes are allowed to land. Because there's limits on every plane, says it's just, X amount of knots of X amount of degrees that you can, come in and land safe. So there would be some loss, possibly, because they would have to divert to another airport if they had already taken off or they were inbound, or there would be some lost where they just don't fly that day. And that's, I think I had a conversation with Greg, and he says, when the winds are like that, we just decide not to fly.
That's why you're not using much.
And actually with our traffic and our noise problem, it's mainly used for some training now. And we ought to go to Longmont or somewhere else to do some of that training rather than try to use that runway here. Yeah, you had to use it once because you couldn't get around to the 30 with that airplane you were flying.
Yeah, that was.
That's a good story. It's a good story.
It was barely off the ground when you.
Go ahead, Brian.
I'll say, we have a great relationship with the FAA. I don't want to, we've used every trick to try to get them to pay for 321, safety, compromising safety. What about this? What about? And it's still what the first project to get kicked back. So, their response is there's plenty of airports in the metro area that if there's a safety issue, they can go to Erie, so, or Longmont or Front Range or, so.
Is it required to have this?
No. Only if the crosswind component is greater than 4%.
And if you kick this project out of that last little window there, and now you develop that 20 acres, what slots in there for that?
What do you mean, what slots in there?
What would be the next project that would then move up? Because you got your 10-year plan of projects. So if 321 falls off the list, what's coming back in there?
Because I think we go out 10 years. And so I think we would have to start looking at that and seeing what the priority
To
is.
develop that.
Or it could be developed, although the
That
FAA
would fall
again
under-
doesn't really say, hey, close the runway, we're gonna build a building for your flight school or a terminal or
Which
anything.
people would be curious where that 10 million, now all of a sudden, what becomes the new priority for that 10 million in year 8, 9, 10?
I don't think the FAA is going to kick that out. They know the value of that. They also know where our numbers, this was developed before our numbers increased so many. I mean, if you take our new numbers to the FAA, you probably are doing that, we become a big priority to get this done. Am I correct?
Correct. So I think, again, number one task I'm asking for is, do we have the priorities right? And I think we do, but again, that's why I want people to talk about it, you guys to converse about it. Two, do we close that runway and redevelop it? Or do we close it when it reaches that unsafe period, keep it in our 10-year CIP, and so it's closed for 6, 8 years, whatever it is, and then when the money comes in, we do it. Now, I will tell you, the problem is, I don't know what our 11-year project is, but I can guarantee it's probably worth more than $10 million. I mean, by the time we get 10 years in, we're gonna have $50 million more projects to figure out what to spend the money in. So there's a risk in doing that, because they could say, okay, sure, you can keep that runway closed, and then they kick it back, they kick it back, they kick back. For example, our master plan has been kicked back 8 years, I think. This has been kicked back 8 years. So there's, as the airport grows, things change. Again, Alpha Taxiway came from 0 to number 1 priority because of a failure. So if that happens, it would just push that back. So that's kind of where I'm at with what I would like you all to discuss and trying to come up with a recommendation of what do you think we should do with the airport over the next 10 years, John?
Well, what, if you were, contemplating opening that up for development, how does that impact the development that would happen on the Otis and Bravo side? Are those become kind of competing interests for development, or do they lend themselves to such different development that it's a net positive to have it that way, or is there any phasing of how that development would
So I
preferably
think
go?
phase 1, can you go to the airport? Actually, we can do it right off of this one. So we are probably tomorrow closing on a lease between the water tanks and Plas. That's 30 acres. Leaving room for Otis to cross. So that's what we're calling phase 1.
Right.
Anything else is tied into Otis and Delta. If we were to close the crosswind, we'd almost call that phase 2, because it would be ready immediately, sooner. Even if everything worked out and Sims was moved and Otis and Delta went in, we have so much demand. I have companies basically saying, tell me when. We want to build there. We want to be here.
Right, okay.
I'm just I don't have any place to
Doesn't
put them.
compete with ourselves.
I don't think we beat ourselves up. I don't think we lose anything.
Right.
I think we just give sooner opportunity that people can build quickly.
That land is such a valuable asset to the airport. And with the way we've been developing the airport, it's almost invaluable to leave it as a runway that's not being used. I mean, the money that will generate, the things we can do with it, and I think that's what we need to do as a airport advisory board, is kind of figure out what we could do with it. And I know Paul has some ideas and stuff, but I, from a business standpoint, if I owned this thing as a business, that would be an asset I'd be jumping on right away, because it's some really good money for development of the rest of the stuff we have in this area, so.
So I hear.
Well, that kind of becomes the key question, right? Is what's the value to the airport of a crosswind runway, whether it's now or later, if it's rebuilt versus the additional development? I guess I want to hear from kind of the pilot community, which is some of you guys sitting at the table, obviously can probably help answer that question, but
I'm sorry.
I think that constituent group probably should be heard, I would think.
Oh, for sure.
Centennial has a third runway.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how much it's used at all.
Theirs is the east-west runway. That's the
Yeah,
odd one out.
yeah, it's the odd one, but I've never landed on that.
I have, but you have to, and they don't often let you.
I think it's in pretty good shape.
And it doesn't cross, you can use that one more because it doesn't cross, 3517.
You can use it to take off a lot more easily.
That's right.
Yeah,
So
because
they-
otherwise you're,
So they will, I would guess their percentage of use is higher. Because it doesn't interfere as much as this
Maybe.
runway does.
I don't know, they don't like you to do
They
anything
don't,
down there.
right there. They get mad about everything down there.
Yeah.
Basically established the Windsor and the Rockies Museum and the Education Center down there. That runway is used a lot.
Is it now getting used more?
It's used a lot. And
Well, and
in case you haven't landed on it, it's used.
it's a comment maybe to what Brian said, but if we talk to the FAA about this project being a safety oriented project and they've rejected it year over year, they don't agree that it's a safety oriented project.
Yeah.
Meaning that they say there's plenty of northwest runway or north-south runways available if the weather, favors one. You just
The
gotta
big
really
jets aren't
go
gonna
on
use
one.
it. Small planes can land it. They had emergency, could put it on the taxiway, Otis.
Right.
That'd be top notch. Tony, did you have a
Oh,
question?
that's great.
I want to rewind back to Jens's question about the value. Given your priority list, in order that on the priority list, which has the greater, going down that list, which has the greater value, bottom line of this airport? And I think that needs to be considered. There needs to be some type of value to what we want to do as to what is it gonna add to the bottom line in this airport?
Mhm. So Otis and Delta are financially the number one, moneymaker for the airport. That 200 acres of developable is almost the exact acreage is on the north side. So you think about all the income that we get from all the leases and all the hangars on the north side, we're basically gonna double that by developing the south side.
But if you back up one, and I'd say the number one priority is to keep 3-0 and 2-1 operation.
Yes.
That's the thing that's number one, no matter what we do or spend money, that has to be strengthened in good shape or we lose.
Yeah.
I think that went to Jansen's question about, what does that do? So that is critical, but again, we've got time on that.
And the FAA knows that's our number one priority also.
So if there's a failure or something, you're able to come in as an emergency.
Sure.
Yep.
Redirect response.
That's important. You're talking about opportunity cost of refurbishing to one. Say there's a cost of doing that, but what are we giving up because we're
What
doing
would
that?
be?
That's your
what would
opportunity cost.
Be given up
Right.
in order to do that.
In the financial world, that's opportunity cost, and we'd have to suss that out to make a good decision.
Thanks.
And so what would we do with that acreage if not using it as a runway?
And Paul, it may be a tough question. I mean, I'm not a pilot, but many of your own
You're
favorite.
forgiven.
But like the business case for 321, I'm just not hearing around the table. I mean, I'm not even hearing from the pilots of it. It's like, I don't know, but you'd have to see a lot more information or something to really
That's
sell
not
me.
analytic.
It's not, yeah, there's not really a whole lot of anything that gets you really excited to say, I should fight for that. So I want to come back.
Funny you should say that, right? Because I literally thought, and again, Stan's here and he may disagree, but I literally thought that this would be, excuse my language, a shitstorm.
Okay.
I thought that, but then when we start doing the 1.5 ops, 10 to 15, landings a day on that, I mean, and I went to Greg and I went to Spartan and I went to these flight schools and said, what does it do? You guys are the biggest users of the airport, the daily, and both of them were like, we either divert or we don't fly that day. And the numbers are so low, and again, I think Brian said it was like 4 or 5%, where the wind shifts, where it's, it just doesn't make sense. So I was surprised. I literally was very surprised that I didn't get more pushback. And again, I think David kind of started with a little bit of it, like, hey, that's an asset. And I agree. We hate to give up asphalt.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my personal experience with it is that, and it's always been coming back in, after a long trip. And it's usually been at 2 times that I can think of. We're in the winter and, the weather was bad and, it was the only option.
But it has no ILS, no GPS, it has no instrument of purchase to it.
Yeah, well, the one that the last one was it last year? I came in on an instrument approach to 3-0 right and circle
Yeah.
to 3.
But if you knew that runway wasn't there, right, you'd go to Port Collins.
Yeah. No, I'm not disagreeing with you.
I'm just saying that's what you would do.
Yeah.
So.
John, are you up there? Hasn't been texted.
I am. I was muted, sorry.
Did you get him over as a panelist, as a speaker?
He texted.
Can you hear me?
he's on, so.
He's on.
We can see him. Over here.
John, any comments?
Can you guys hear me now?
Ron?
I'm speaking. Huh.
We can hear you.
Oh, you can? Okay. Yeah, I have, let's see. I've had my plane based out of there since 16. I've put 1,200 hours on it in 16 and I haven't landed on it yet. And I fly a Cirrus too. But I will tell you that unless it was really right down the runway of 3 or 2-1, I'd probably prefer the big wide 3-0 right.
Probably 15 years ago, I should have used it. I was coming in at 172 to 3-0 2-9, and saw the storm moving through. You can see it on the ground. And I thought I could get down before it hit, and it hit me just as I was landing, and it tipped my wing up. There used to be a water tower down there. And I was headed to the water tower, and I kicked left rudder, drove it off the runway through the median and got it down. And that would have been one time, but then after it went through, it kind of changed directions again. But I was trying to make it in before the wind hit me, and it didn't work. It bended.
That's why you sold that plane.
Next day.
Sir, do you have any comments in the back? Are you a pilot or?
I actually was on board of directors, therefore, back in mid-90s. So master plan, everything on the other side of the city is part of our master plan. For the airport. So
Consistent story.
it's, interesting to sit here and see, I recently retired. And so I'm just, I love the airport.
See, that's why we're calling it Otis, because pure force of will is gonna make that happen. It's been in the plans for 25 years.
And your name, sir?
Jim Dykel.
Hey, Jim.
Jim, nice to
Glad
meet
you're
you.
here. Thanks for your previous service. You may be called back.
Jim serves on the Arvada Golf Advisory Committee.
Oh, yeah, he belongs on this
And
team too.
Terrible golf. You
Good decision maker, though.
So we're closing in on 6.
Yeah.
Any other questions? In my mind, again, you guys are bored, you kind of do what you want, but if, Phil, I'm thinking like a point paper or just kind of a, 1 or 2 pager, here's our recommendations, here's what we think, going. And that we can discuss either next month or the month after, depending on how long, it goes for, but, kind of keep it relatively simple. But straightforward about, hey, here's what we think we should be doing. This is our recommendation, for the next, basically for the next 10 years of the airport.
Kim, I have one last question that might help us. This was all focused on runways and taxiways. Are there other types of investments that the FAA will fund other than runway?
They will, it's very difficult, so they do the master plan. They can also do a noise study, but again, when you take that, if you were to take a noise study at $500,000 to $750,000, I gotta move something down, right? They can also do,
Terminal, right?
they can also do terminals, they can also do snow, and equipment storage for our plows and stuff, so there is some,
Storage, but not the equipment.
they can help with the equipment also. So they do, the problem with it is, this airport's so big and so vast. As you can tell, all of our priorities are asphalt, runways and taxiways. I think if we ever get to the point where we can, get them to build a SRE building, snow removal equipment building, that would be fantastic. A terminal would be fantastic. If JSX expands, which we all hope they do, maybe that's something we go back to them and say, hey, we'd really like to, talk terminal into that priority list.
And all the things you just talked about fit into that area where, 1-2 is.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's the neat thing about that.
Yes,
And for my own, 2 questions, actually. One's for my own.
you only get one, Tony, sorry.
Oh, well, the first question, can we have get an email with the priority list on it?
Sure.
Yeah, can that be done? And my second question is talking about JSX. Through, let's say, for some reason, 30 becomes unserviceable and prevents them from being able to fly. Is the airport liable to them because they could not use the runway?
No,
Okay.
no, there's no contract where we guarantee that they'll have access to a runway. Again, as Matt, our engineer says, when we close it, it'll be closed for, was it 60 or 90 days, Matt? Yeah, so it'll be closed for 69. Now, again, they can shift to the shorter runway and may still be able to get most, if not all of their ops. It's a different, more high performance plane that's designed for 55 to 60 people, but they only put 30 on it. So that gives it that much more performance. So, when we were talking to the airline that was flying 737s, fully booked, fully loaded in the summer on the short runway, they just said, well, we don't have all the metrics that we need for safety. But no, there is no guarantee that they'll have a, runway.
So if 30 went down, they could use left
Correct.
with no problem. They'd
That's-
still be able to fly the same capacity.
I don't want to say with no problem, because again, that's a flight engineer, chief pilot,
Right,
math, discussion.
sure,
But I believe they could operate a vast majority of their flights.
If they went down, it'd have to be a very temporary, I mean, you work hard maintaining that runway. You know that there's no soft spots, you know where it is. So it's not like all of a sudden tomorrow, we're gonna have a ability
A
not
giant
to.
sinkhole.
If somebody plowed the plane into the middle of it.
The other thing is, if we did get a giant sinkhole, let's just say, the FAA would come in with emergency funding and would fix that, and they would do it very quickly.
That would be an issue.
Yeah, so, normal degradation, we have to maintain, we do the crack seals, we do the fog seals, we do the mill and fill. We kind of do that project and keep that program rolling. But if there was something catastrophic, where a plane augured in and blew up, or a sinkhole, then it would be emergency funding through the FAA. So again, it would be a short term, so thanks for that, Randy.
And just so you guys know, JSX is able to operate on 30 left, but it is up to the pilot's discretion whether to use it on that day in that particular situation. Passengers, bags, et cetera. But for the most part, they are able to operate.
How do we do this as a protocol? We
Well, that's what I was
can't have
gonna
a
ask.
committee more than 2 people.
Well, there's two things. So yes, but what's your timeline that you need our,
Mid to late October, so I think we have two
Between
advisory board meetings
Okay.
between now and and we'll just make sure we schedule that
Yeah.
FAA CDOT meeting after our October meeting.
okay, so we have a little bit of time. Now to your procedural question, if we want to kick this around, chew on it as a board.
We can workshop it, can't we?
Yeah, you can workshop, you just can't make a decision.
I mean, is that the best?
Well, that's okay. We can do all that. I think it still just has to be a public meeting when we're all gathering to discuss it.
To notice it, yeah.
Yeah.
If we want to break it up into smaller pieces where we can maneuver a little faster and then come together and discuss, some content from smaller teams, it's 2-person per subcommittee. Without having to go through a public meeting kind of an event.
Whatever we need, whatever we need.
I mean, I love small committees in action, but on something like this, it's a one and done for the next 10 years.
Right.
It seems like a workshop. I mean, I know they're public, but there's not public input. It's just
No, it's just,
people are able
just
to
a
listen.
Have the
public.
notification, it's just.
I would think a one and done workshop would work a little better in this context.
Well, I think you could probably use both projects. If we need to do any research, like go talk to the flights, Greg's gone, but I'm pointing to his chair. If we want to go talk to the flight schools, like you've done a little bit to get some input, we can do that with 2 people, not the whole team. You know what I'm saying, to gather data so that there's the prep work for it. That's all I'm thinking there. That makes us a little more nimble than to have to do that as a group.
You've done a lot of that, is what I'm hearing.
What about a couple
I have.
of Saturdays as a group in here?
Say
Paul,
that
I've
again.
got a question.
Saturdays.
Yeah,
Go ahead, John, on the
You
phone.
mentioned on that slide that listed all the projects that the 321 cost estimate was probably from 18 and maybe a lot more than that, 7 million. Are there all the other numbers, do you think, pretty accurate on the other projects, or is that the only? And
from October, yes. From March, when everything took off and inflation went through the roof and costs are, 30% increased, I don't believe so. I mean, those are the numbers that we're working with, that we came up in October and went through our, planning process. I would say, I mean, just add 20 to 30% to those costs, I would say, just to cover what's happening in our country right now.
So are these numbers based on some limits that the FAA has set in terms of how much they will fund, or it's just, this is what we'd like to do, and if we can come up with 10% between us and CDOT, they'll fund it?
So it's kind of not that straightforward. We sit in a room much like this with our engineers and let's say we added a new, let's say we had a sinkhole, right? And we go, sinkhole, Matt and his team would say, we believe to fix that sinkhole would be this much money. And then we'll need to design it, this year and then fix it next year. And then CDOT's like, seems a little high, and it's kind of a give and take flow. But the reality is it's based mostly on engineering estimates from Javiation. And then the FAA kind of says, all right, we kind of buy that. CDOT says we buy it. We say we buy it. And so we kind of all agree on a set thing. And the reality is we are really only focusing on kind of the first couple years. Because again, anything that's in 2030, we don't want to waste that much brain power of something that's, 8 years away and could be 40, 50, 60% more and may get pushed back further.
So we don't really need to worry so much about what the numbers are because we're paying a pretty small percentage of this
Right.
anyway. Okay, and if they go up, then we'd expect the FAA to step up.
Yeah, they would pay their 90%, CDOT and us would split the remaining 10.
And just so you know, the way we get projects in front of the FAA is to put them in our master plan, which, we'll look at and go, runway extension 30 left is probably not gonna happen, let's not ask. But we really need taxiway alpha rehab, so let's ask for that. So it all starts with the master plan. So thank you.
Hey, Brian Aylis, Ben, can you get us a new contact sheet for the board, phone numbers and emails and all that? Because I don't think after we redone it, I don't have all that.
But I'll
Yeah.
text Ben and get that
Text
to you.
Ben and get that.
Okay, we're past time. Hey, when you're not at the meeting.
I do remember the quiz.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
Since we're past time, a couple of takeaways, obviously very important. The board wants to have full discussion, right? We want to be able to kick this around as the whole group. So we'll find some time to do that, okay? I think what maybe would be useful is, I don't know what you're doing in the next few days, Jansen, but as the vice chair, maybe you and I meet with Paul, kind of flush out maybe a little bit of a game plan, and fire that out to the board, say, here's what we think might be a good approach on how to just digest the data, get together, have some conversations, see what your availability is for some couple of sessions, maybe to get together and just talk about this.
But I would like to make a suggestion and ask the attorney expert on a lot of development. What factor would you add due to the business costs or building costs today versus when these numbers were developed?
I think you're spot on.
The 30%.
20 to 30% of error.
20 to 30 on top of these.
Top of these numbers.
Okay.
That's fair. And I, to piggyback on, I think if we have questions, if you're funneling them back to Paul, what we'd love to do is to make sure that when we come back together as a group, that we've gone out and figured out all those questions. I think that's-
We just want to make them useful sessions, right? So if there's any data gathering that we need to do before that, we want to make sure we have identified that and go do it.
Yep.
So,
And happy to.
yeah, okay. All right.
Okay. One final, I think that's the last slide, Brian. Can you just go make sure it goes to the question slide? I didn't miss anything. Yes, okay. I don't know if all of you got it. Some of you did. There was some confusion with the county. I hope all of you applied to be on the board again for next year. I am going to, you did not? I don't think you
I don't
need.
think you were up for renewal yet.
Yeah, it was,
No, okay.
we're only supposed to turn over maximum of 3 a year, and we had 5 this year. So somehow there was a breakdown, and they gave us like 4 days to get the notice out, so it's been a little bit confusing. With all of your consent, I am going to recommend to the board, because again, we're about to step into not only this project, but everything else that's coming with Otis and Delta and all these other development things. If you guys are all willing to serve for another term, I'm gonna recommend that the entire board stays on for another year.
Paul, I didn't get a notice, was that, but I was new, I think. Was that?
Oh, we already cut you, John.
John, see ya.
No, you might not have been up for renewal.
Who was
Okay.
on vacation and they like got a note that they were gonna open it up on
Yeah, it was
3
you, David.
o'clock?
That was me. and
That was David.
Caution
Yeah.
and when I came back, I was I think past due, but they did.
They opened it up
for
a couple
me.
more. So again, it was 5 people, John, and I don't recall that you were on that list. Again, it was only supposed to be 3, and it was people who had only been here a year, it got kind of messy at the county, so, once we get through the nominations, which is August 17th, then we're gonna go back and meet with the county and go, how do we keep this from happening again? Like, the system broke down somehow.
Third time to do it.
Third.
For plus 2 years.
Yeah. So-
Can't quite tell if Paul's trying to kick me off or not.
So with that,
There's nothing subtle about Paul.
Okay.
to you to close the meeting.
Yeah,
Paul.
that's, any comments? We had a couple just as we rolled through, but any closing comments from our participants? Okay. Nothing on the chat? Okay, then we will call the meeting closed. Thanks for coming. A couple of interesting months ahead.
Yeah.
What's your schedule like here next few days? Thanks, John. Thanks for
See you, John.
coming in. What are you doing?
I'm pretty wide open tomorrow.
Tomorrow's actually a good day.
Yeah, I don't know what you're.
Tomorrow. How you doing tomorrow? Sooner better than later.
Sooner's right.
Do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I think you haven't been.
I can do tomorrow at 3:30. For 4:30.
I've been on the silver.
I'm open.
Okay, 3:30?
Do you want to do it in person or do you want to do it virtual?
I work for Sarah.
I'm fine to come here.
Okay.
Just hang on.
I do have a hard stop at 4:30.
We'll bring beer to the meeting if that's your.
What's the big lease on this?
I haven't got news. We're going to Bandon.
I can't.
Yeah, exactly.
At the right time.
Everyone talks about how fun it is.
Can we say 3:30, guys?
Yes. That's gonna work.
Without glasses? Except put it on Friday. So it's called ACAP.
Okay. sounds like we're-
American Corporate Aviation Partners, Oak Tree is their financial hedge fund guys from New York. They actually won an RFP to develop the South Side.
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna double check and then
We were
pull it up
negotiating,
brave.
but it's COVID hit, they're like,
I thought I was sharing on my screen. I did this for the round
It is.
table on Monday.
And we were very, very specific about it because that's our last.
Yeah, I must, didn't
Have
have.
complete oversight on projects, whether they're approved, all right, see, Jensen, whether they're approved or not, because we don't want them to build 100 T hundred. And they're talking different companies per world.
I mean, I actually.
I think we should. Yeah, no, yeah.
And they're still funding.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Now, they can't tell me they got it, they don't got it, but they're like, we're still in.
No,
negotiations.
I was like,
Do it quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna do a photo shoot out here in like a week, so.
yeah.
Here's
Here's the.
We did a thing with their
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that,
Oh, yeah. That's good.
it was awesome.
Um,
Back at it.
Yeah, we did a thing with
So it's almost-
Justin Firestone, one of their co-founders. Did a keynote presentation. I picked him up for the business jet in
Yeah,
Miami.
once you guys,
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And they've got some amazing people.
They do.
Some Ideas.
Do you remember what the engineering services one we said we'd have?
They just keep bringing it.
I think we're.
Yeah.
But that, the pictures you showed us, the plan over there.
It's half a
I
million
mean,
square
we haven't had the
feet,
meeting.
300 jobs, I mean, it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
And man, that would be great. No,
That
this is, so this would be the second one, so I want all you guys to stay.
How many questions do you
You're
have?
that fall.
Right,
We appreciate that. Like, you know, you come up to these and.
Well, you're,
Don't,
Yeah, we love this.
before, I would just felt it, the guys that don't build now, I would be in place when.
well, you're gonna need them.
Yeah. So
When they're on the south side, so. So that would be a discussion for like the board to have, is like, look, we didn't get
20th, we should be.
Taj Mahal, right, 500,000 square feet of hangar and office.
What happens if they don't get it back in that 30?
Run out of money, it's, you know, no longer, or they decided to do whatever, if you want, but we have this other option where the.
Yeah.
Working together?
I mean, yeah, it would be probably.
Or do I hold out and say, no, you need to find me another world headquarters and, yeah, build, so.
Why don't we just be like.
That would be a discussion that hopefully I don't ever have to have, because everyone will,
Let's go.
Yeah, that'd be great.
that'd be a great accident.
This would be.
Yeah, I think it's,
Well, I
it's exciting. It's challenging, it's limited dollars, right? We have to sit there and go, what really makes the most sense?
I mean, we'd have to get
And
Mike.
again, I know what I want. I want to support our tenants and our people. and-
Even if they get an active support,
Yeah, I don't know.
we have to.
Be a good discussion.
Yeah, for sure. All right, thanks, man.
David.
We're at kind of that tipping point that if they took, I mean, in the contract, it said you expect, all they have to do is sign it, and get performance bonds to you guys and certificate of insurance. They probably could get it
So
done.
she sent Hewitt today.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Brian was asking if it went longer,
Yeah, what happens?
but they have essentially 30 days to get it done. There should be no problem to get it done. If they can get it done in 30, then we'll start talking, all right, when's construction start date? When's pre-con date? Because if we started by September 15th, I feel confident that by Halloween, it's done.
Yeah.
And it, we're not flying yet. But yeah, if they were to drag their feet and say, actually, we don't want to do it, then you guys get their bid bond. You don't want to go there, but
No.
then you get their bid bond, you have to go out to rebid. We do that this winter, and we get them or a new contractor in the spring will do it.
Hey, can you pull up the AIP, the sort of spreadsheet?
In operation.
Yeah. Before the one, but then she let second, third slide in here, so one more. This one, are we really doing 3-0 right in 2027?
No, that was when we were talking to them.
Microscopic, but
And see that, you know, if it lasts, then we'll see that one. We can go stall. So it's
they have a strengthening.
So is that what that was, Brian? The spirit? Because I'm reading it, then I'm wearing this lap on here, I'm like, I got it, fine. And I'm doing the briefing right there.
Yeah, that was EIP, you guys turned in, but they didn't commit. Yeah, so they have committed money, really, they have these orders to develop that listed, it's still